Iran's military says its first wave of attacks on Israel since April's ceasefire is now over, although it threatened to resume the strikes if Israel continued attacks on Lebanon. Tehran fired missiles towards Israel late on Sunday, saying it came in retaliation for Israeli strikes on the outskirts of Beirut. Israel responded with its own bombing and earlier this Monday claimed an attack on a petrochemical plant in Iran's southwest. Earlier, US President Donald Trump demanded that Israel and Iran immediately stop shooting. The Israeli military has emphasized that it remained in close contact with US military officials.
We're acting responsibly with careful planning based on organized operational plans. The Chief of Staff is commanding this campaign together with IDF commanders, holding ongoing assessments and maintaining close contact with his counterpart in the US military.
Well, for more on this story, we can cross live to France 24's Noga Tarnapolsky in Jerusalem. Noga, it's been a whirlwind 24 hours or so. I think many are asking what exactly just happened, and is this over? I mean, we haven't heard any official announcement from Israel or the US at this point.
That's right, we haven't, and it's really hard to describe. I was trying to think for myself, and if we're going to compare this very, very long war to a period of illness in somebody, to a period of suffering from a virus, I suppose that what we have to say for the last 24 hours is that there was a spike in the viral load. In other words, in a very long period of war, almost 3 years now, what happened in the last 24 hours was this massive spike of hostilities, direct hostilities between Iran and Israel, not via any of Iran's proxies, as we've seen since this war started with the October 7th attack of Hamas against Israel. And it seems to have started with no clear reason, and it seems now to have, in fact, ended at the snap of the fingers of the President of the United States. I just want to add that the ceasefire that was imposed by Donald Trump in April was a weak ceasefire, in part because it did not emanate from any of the active parties. It was simply imposed by the president, as was imposed his ceasefire on Gaza. And these ceasefires imposed from far away don't seem to have legs. So I can tell you that even now, as I'm speaking to you, Karis, there are launches of drones and missiles from Hezbollah, not from the nation of Lebanon, but from the territory of Lebanon, towards Israel, and Israel will be expected to retaliate, to respond to those. We even saw that in the hour immediately following the Iranian announcement. Israel launched airstrikes against what it called Hezbollah infrastructure in southern Lebanon, and Hezbollah retaliated by shooting projectiles into Israel. So I don't know if what we just saw was real war or just a day of a kind of bad mood. I don't know if each side, the Israelis and the Iranians, are testing the will of the Americans. And I'm not sure that what seems to be a return to the ceasefire now, an Israeli acquiescence to a direct request from the US president, I'm not sure this will last more than a few hours.
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump's involvement in all of this, because we saw those posts to social media earlier where he appeared to put Israel and Iran on the same footing by calling them both to halt the fighting. How is this being understood in Israel, especially regarding Netanyahu's relationship with Trump?
Look, I mean, it's undeniably a catastrophic diplomatic failure for Netanyahu. However, some of his ministers are trying to spin this. The fact that at the end of 2 years and 8 months of war that began, again, I'll emphasize, with a Hamas attack, an attack by an Iranian proxy against Israel, the fact that now there is a US president who Netanyahu has repeatedly called the best friend Israel has ever had in history in the White House, is now saying to Israel and Iran, as if they were both children on an equal footing, just cut it out. This is a terrible diplomatic defeat. It's a real humiliation for Netanyahu. And I don't think it's coincidental that Israelis and the rest of the world have not seen or heard from Benjamin Netanyahu since before this eruption of war began and all the way until now, as I'm speaking with you, during this entire event, beginning, middle, and end, which saw millions of Israelis go into bomb shelters, to at least 2 days of school canceled, flights canceled, the whole country put on a very expensive and very stressful war footing. No one has heard a single word from Benjamin Netanyahu. I think that indicates the level of stress that the prime minister is under, and also just the corner into which he has boxed himself between Donald Trump, who is an unpredictable ally, and his own ministers, his closest allies, who even until a few hours ago were screaming on social media networks that Tehran should burn. And those are the two, the rock and the hard place, where Netanyahu is trying to negotiate his next few hours right now.
Well, earlier you mentioned that fighting between Israel and Hezbollah and Iran, linking this ceasefire with the US to the fighting in Lebanon. We can kind of imagine that Iran is trying to dictate the terms here. Where does this leave Lebanon?
Iran is very much trying to dictate the terms, and it's an interesting and somehow an audacious gambit. Remember, the Iranian regime is facing an economic cataclysm. It's unpopular among its own people. It is now facing real hostility from its own Persian Gulf neighbors who were attacked by Iran. It's a weakened tiger. And yet, by the simple fact that the Islamic regime of Iran survived this war, when both Netanyahu and Trump started out this adventure in late February, saying that their aim was to topple this regime, that the Iranian mullahs have won. They are in a victory position. What they're trying to do now is parlay this pretty weak position they have into their new role as a regional powerhouse. And they're trying to absolutely thwart the efforts of the year-old Lebanese government that's trying to establish real sovereignty in Lebanon, that has declared Hezbollah an enemy of the state, that is demanding, like Israel and the United States do, that Hezbollah disarm completely. They say there can only be one army in one state. Iran is trying to bring by force Lebanon under its wing, even against the will of the Lebanese government and many of its people, through this gambit. And for now, it does seem that Iran is having quite a bit of success, at least vis-a-vis the White House.